Hello, friends. Today we're meeting a very special hero in Captain America, the First Avenger. Imagine a skinny guy named Steve Rogers who dreams of becoming a hero. Guess what? He gets a chance to become the strongest and bravest hero, Captain America. With his new muscles and a super shield, he's ready to fight bad guys and protect everyone. But can he stop the biggest villain during a huge war? Put on your capes, because we're about to join Captain America on his thrilling adventure. Are you ready to see him in action? Let's jump into the story.
Norway. They are looking for a baffling relic known as the Tesseract, supposed to have untold capacities. After finding the genuine Tesseract, Schmidt arranges the congregation overseer who watched it to be killed, alongside every other person in the town. At an enrolling station in Brooklyn, Steve Rogers, a 20-something, 90-pound, 5-foot-tall asthmatic enthusiastically anticipates the chance to enroll in the U.S. Armed Force. Notwithstanding, the tactical doctor dismisses Steve's application because of his clinical history, which looks like that of a 90-year elderly person. This denotes Steve's fourth bombed endeavor to join up, assigned as Military 4F. Feeling discouraged, Steve attends a fair with his friend, Bucky Barnes. He watches as Playboy inventor Howard Stark unsuccessfully demonstrates a flying car. Steve leaves the gathering and heads to another recruiting station. Bucky finds him and inquires about Steve's plan to improve his application this time. Unbeknownst to them, Dr. Abraham Erskine eavesdrops on their conversation, impressed by Steve's determination. Bucky wishes Steve the best of luck on his most recent application, and Steve heads straight to the recruiting station for his fifth physical. Inside, Steve sits on an examination table and grows nervous when Dr. Erskine enters the room. Dr. Erskine has Steve's previous applications on record and is concerned about his repeated rejections. To assess Steve's suitability, Erskine questions whether Steve's desire to join the military is solely motivated by a desire to fight Nazis. Steve honestly admits that while he's not inherently a killer, he dislikes bullies regardless of their origin. He also shows little concern when Erskine reveals his German birthplace. Impressed by Steve's moral compass and unwavering conviction, Erskine enlists Rogers as a candidate for Project Rebirth, a super soldier experiment conducted by the Strategic Scientific Reserve under the supervision of Erskine, Chester Phillips, and Peggy Carter. During his basic training, Phillips remains unconvinced by Erskine's assertions that Rogers is the ideal candidate for the procedure. However, he relents after witnessing Rogers perform an act of selfless bravery. I've revised the passage for clarity, fixed punctuation and grammar errors, and improved readability. Let me know if you need further assistance. The night before the treatment, Erskine reveals to Rogers that Schmidt underwent an imperfect version of the procedure and suffered negative side effects due to his inner ambition for power and obsession with becoming a superior man. However, he reassures Rogers that he chose him because he believed Rogers was inherently good and because he had been weak his whole life, he would not lose respect for the strength he would gain. In a secret military installation high in the Alps, Johann Schmidt brings the glowing cube to Dr. Zola, his Hydra weapon specialist. The cube's seemingly limitless power enables Schmidt and Dr. Zola to power unstoppable energy guns and cannons, intending to use the power to fuel Zola's inventions. Meanwhile, Schmidt, having discovered Erskine's location, dispatches an assassin to kill him. Peggy and Steve enter the antique shop, exchanging passcodes with an old woman manning the register, and descend into a secret military bunker concealed within. Peggy leads Steve to the heart of the bunker where they find Dr. Erskine preparing a medical capsule along with Howard Stark, and Colonel Phillips rubbing elbows with senators and dignitaries. Steve is instructed to remove his shirt and sit in the capsule. Stark explains that the procedure will first involve injecting muscle regenerators into Rogers' major muscle groups, followed by bombardment with Vita rays. Erskine acknowledges the pain Steve will endure but assures him that he will emerge stronger. Carter wishes Steve good luck and joins Phillips in the overhead viewing chamber. The serum is injected into Steve's muscles, and he is enclosed within the Vita ray capsule. Despite yelling in pain, Steve insists they continue, and the procedure is quickly completed. When the capsule is opened, Steve emerges a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier, with solid muscle, the most superficial aspects of his body artificially raised to the maximum human potential. Everybody, including Phillips, celebrates the success of the procedure and descends from the viewing chamber to congratulate Erskine. After witnessing the success of the experiment, one of the attendees reveals himself to be Schmidt's assassin, Heinz Kruger. Kruger stays behind, placing a small satchel on a chair. Moments later, the viewing gallery explodes. Descending the stairs, Kruger fatally shoots Dr. Erskine, killing him, and grabs the last vial of the super soldier serum before escaping into the streets of New York. Rogers pursues Kruger, using his new strength and stamina to run down Kruger's car on foot. Despite Kruger's attempt to escape in a submarine, Rogers catches up to him. However, during the struggle, the vial of super soldier serum is broken, and Kruger immediately commits suicide by cyanide pill before he can be interrogated for information. With Erskine dead and the super soldier formula lost, the SSR is ordered to join the war and engage Hydra directly. However, Phillips decides to leave Rogers behind and allow scientists to study him in an attempt to rediscover Erskine's formula. Senator Brand approaches Rogers and offers him the chance to tour the nation for the USO to promote war donations, using his image as the strong, ideal soldier as a symbol for the public to rally behind, which Rogers accepts. During his work for the USO, Rogers performs in scripted stage shows as the star-spangled character Captain America. As Rogers continues touring across the country, Captain America gains great popularity among the public, leading to increasingly elaborate shows, as well as appearances in film strips, comic books, and other memorabilia. Although Rogers is happy to be contributing towards the war effort, he grows increasingly weary of being paraded around while not being able to have a more direct role alongside those actively fighting. Meanwhile, Schmidt unveils his new Tesseract-powered weaponry to 3 Nazi officers sent to oversee his operation. They ridicule Schmidt, saying that the Nazi party no longer takes him and Hydra seriously due to his obsession with magic and the occult, playfully referring to him as the Red Skull. The Führer feels the Red Skull has been indulged long enough, a name that infuriates Schmidt. Schmidt takes the 3 to his weapons lab where they are shown his unstoppable energy weapons and a strategic map of Europe dotted with targets. One of the 3 notices a target hovering over Berlin and confronts Schmidt. Schmidt quickly vaporizes the 3 Nazi officers. He announces that Hydra has disbanded from the Nazi party and is now enemies with the world. Schmidt uses this moment to declare his secession from the Third Reich, claiming that Hydra could grow no further in Adolf Hitler's shadow and will now follow his agenda. Hydra continued to siphon energy from the Tesseract, using the stored energy to create a variety of weapons and integrating it into a range of vehicles and other technology, quickly giving the faction the potential to become a major threat to the warfront and the world at large. In November 1943, while performing for active servicemen and encountering his colleagues from the SSR, Rogers learns that Barnes' unit was lost in a battle against Hydra. Despite Phillips' insistence on the futility of the situation, Rogers refuses to believe that Barnes is dead and becomes determined to mount a solo rescue attempt, receiving help from Carter and Howard Stark, who flies them both over the battlefield in his private plane. Steve surmises that Stark and Carter have a relationship and bashfully withholds his feelings for her. Just as anti-aircraft guns from Hydra begin firing on Stark's plane, Steve parachutes in, while the other 2 escape back to safety. Steve stealthily makes his way into the Hydra base, taking out numerous guards in the process. Rogers manages to sneak into Hydra's main factory where he finds and frees most of the captive soldiers, who begin a riot and start escaping while Rogers continues on to find Barnes. Steve makes his way through the facility and happens across Bucky, who is tied down to an operating table and has clearly been tortured. Steve also notices an oversized tactical map mounted on the wall, with various marked installations. He frees Bucky, who is surprised to see that Steve is taller than him, and commits the map to memory. Schmidt, seeing the prisoners escaping and Rogers moving through the facility, sets the factory to self-destruct to cover Hydra's operations and evacuate to another facility. As the building begins to detonate, Schmidt confronts Rogers on a high catwalk, where he makes light of their similarities following their mutual use of the super soldier serum. Schmidt expresses his belief that they have risen above the visage of normal humans before revealing his face to be a mask, removing it to display the Red Skull-like face that earned him the sobriquet the Red Skull. The Red Skull escapes the exploding facility in a strangely designed private plane, while Zola sneaks away in Schmidt's roadster. Steve and Bucky have a huge divide to cross to reach their freedom. Bucky crosses a trembling, buckling support beam and manages to reach safety moments before the beam plummets into the fire below. Left with no other option, Steve backs up as far as he can and leaps over the burning chasm. Rogers leads Barnes to the roof, where they both barely manage to escape the factory themselves before regrouping with the escaped soldiers and marching back to base. Following the liberation of the Allied prisoners, Rogers gains the respect and acknowledgement of his superior officers as a soldier and is given high rank, along with the opportunity to fight as Captain America, a key figure on the war front opposing Hydra directly. News of Captain America's success on the battlefield spreads worldwide. However, Rogers does not appear to receive his medal from Congress. The reason for his absence is in London, where Steve provides Phillips and Carter with his best recollection of the Hydra base map and expresses his intention to personally destroy each base one by one, recruiting a team of men made up of those he liberated in Italy. Steve meets the Howling Commandos in a bar, and they eagerly accept his offer. While there, all the men are surprised when Peggy enters, dressed in a form-fitting cocktail dress. She ignores everyone, including Bucky, and flirts with Steve, expressing her desire to dance with him someday. Howard Stark outfits Rogers with advanced equipment, including a durable custom combat uniform and a circular shield made of vibranium, a metal lighter than steel and resistant to vibrations, capable of absorbing heavy impacts. Over the next 2 years, Rogers and his Howling Commandos lead a strong offensive, sabotaging various Hydra operations, much to Schmidt's frustration. In 1945, the team assaults a train carrying Zola. Rogers and Barnes engage in a fight with the soldiers on the train, during which Barnes falls into an icy river below to his apparent death. Meanwhile, a soldier locates Zola on the train and captures him. Rogers is deeply affected by the loss of his best friend and is convinced by Carter to use his sorrow as motivation to put an end to Hydra for good. Using information extracted from Zola, the final Hydra stronghold is located, and Rogers leads an attack to stop Schmidt from using weapons of mass destruction on the United States. Rogers and his team prepare a battle plan to take down Red Skull at his headquarters. Dressed in a new uniform, Rogers mounts a Harley and charges the base, easily dodging Hydra soldiers and tanks. Inside the base, surrounded by a Hydra army, Rogers is taken into custody and led to Red Skull's private weapons lab. Red Skull questions what makes Steve special just as members of his team zip line into the office. A climactic firefight ensues as soldiers under Phillips and Carter storm the base, killing many Hydra soldiers. Red Skull flees to his private hangar, where a gigantic flying wing, Hydra's massive aircraft bomber powered by the Tesseract, is preparing for takeoff. Rogers climbs aboard the Valkyrie as it takes off, sneaking into the craft where he finds dozens of plane missiles, each labeled with a different major American city. Inside the large cockpit, Captain America and Red Skull engage in a fisticuffs battle. Red Skull fires his cube energy pistol at Steve, who easily deflects the shots using his shield. One shot is deflected into one of the cockpit's center consoles containing the Tesseract. Schmidt physically handles the Tesseract, opening a wormhole into space, sucking him into it in bright light. The cube falls to the floor, burning through the plane and plunging into the ocean. Seeing no way to land the plane without risking detonation of its weapons, Rogers decides to crash it on the Arctic shelf. Before doing so, he makes a sorrowful goodbye to Carter, promising to take her dancing, knowing he will never be able to fulfill that promise. Stark later recovers the Tesseract from the ocean floor but is unable to locate Rogers' body or Schmidt's aircraft. Rogers awakens in a 1940s-style hospital room, deducing from an anachronistic radio broadcast that he is out of place. He flees outside into what is revealed to be present-day Times Square, where Nick Fury tells him he has been asleep for nearly 70 years. Stunned by this revelation, Rogers' only response is that he had a date. A year later, Fury approaches Rogers, proposing a mission with worldwide ramifications.